Hello, everyone, and welcome to Grit Daily and South by Southwest 2024. I'm so excited to have this session talking about how blockchain can solve really human problems. I'm Swan. I was the global head of digital for companies like Nike, Revlon, Estee Lauder. During the pandemic, I fell into Web3 because I did really well on Clubhouse. And after a few million followers in a year, I learned about NFTs, I became a creator, and now I'm really passionate about helping technologies find a home and commercial value. I'm so excited to be having a conversation with Cristina here today, who's in a different part of this space, but equally using blockchain to solve lots of problems. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon again. And my name is Cristina Imperial Carl. I'm the founder of Ediphi. Like Swan, I fell into blockchain during the pandemic when we found a great use for it for training and hospitality and giving access to those who have been traditionally marginalized.
Now, this is one of my favorite formats because we just get to be girlfriends and hang out
That's right.
and talk about ourselves, our businesses. But even in the quick few minutes that we've spent together, there's a lot of synergy. So I'm going to make you go first. Tell me about the work you actually do with blockchain. Because to be honest, I mean, there are people that were really early and they were early adopters, they were anti establishment, libertarian. This next wave of adopters, I think not only is it a little bit more democratized, but we're really passionate about taking the technology that was built and solving problems. And I love the problem you're tackling with your business.
Absolutely. So, really, what we're seeing is that blockchain can be used for so much in training and giving people self-agency when we're talking about acquiring of skills and credentials and being able to use that and take that with you as you move along. But not only that, also using it to create personalized learning paths and giving both the worker and the corporations the ability to help match to the goals, right? Both of the worker, again, and the financial goals of corporations. So, in this way, really being able to use blockchain to further everyone's causes.
You know, I love what you said about personalized learning paths because you know, sometimes when you're like, well, if I see it, I'll remember it, or spell it out for me and I'll know. And it's because we learn differently.
Absolutely.
And education, because we needed to scale and educate as many people as possible, I think is very monochrome. There's one way to teach. And by using not only blockchain technologies, but AI technologies, I think we can learn differently and teach differently. And not only in different ways, whether it's audio or spatial or visual, I think the context around it and the immersive experience around VR and AR can change how we actually not only learn and get trained, but how we interact as humans, right?
For sure. I think that, as an immigrant, we have such a very specific, unique point of view. So, using for us immersive technologies and bringing that into someone's world that may not see something the same way as how they're receiving regular corporate style training, right? When it's a PowerPoint or a video, sometimes you don't quite hear words the same way or see things the same way. But when you're in there actually doing it using virtual reality, that's when you really start to see the power of bringing someone into a world and giving them that ability to see to themselves, hey, I can really do this, and let me see how I can build a career in here and become a leader.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I was asked, I was on a Twitter space yesterday for International Women's Day, and people asked, well, how do you encourage more women to get into blockchain and AI and technical fields? And the issue is, I think, like, it doesn't matter what gender you are. If you don't understand the tech, it's really intimidating. And there's jargon, there's inner circles, there's people who've known each other for years. So what I tell people is when you're trying to be interested in a new space, you don't have to understand all the tech to be able to learn how to use it. But the biggest thing is solve what you know. Like, if I grew up in the brand world, which I did, I'm not going to go try to solve nodes and routers and things tomorrow. Focus on what you know. And so the way I kind of fell into blockchain was I was running digital and then e-commerce for Nike. And as much as people love the brand, I mean, that market share is ridiculous. It's $50 billion in sales. But I had no idea who my consumers really were. Now, if they came to my website, sure, I had that data. They came to my store. Sometimes we'd connect it on the back end. But if you bought it through Foot Locker, Foot Locker's not sharing that information with Nike, and you just maybe need the shoes that night. Or better yet, if you're buying like a high heat shoe, you might have bought it on StockX. You might have paid a kid in your neighborhood to wait overnight in line in the rain for it. But Nike has no idea who those consumers are. And so the sneakers app, yes, every, Saturday morning at 7 a.m., if you really want to get up and wait on all these devices to try to buy that shoe, Nike has that info. But the reality is, if you have means, you're probably sleeping till noon. You're buying it for 2 or 3x or 10x on StockX, and you don't think twice about it because you have means. And Nike doesn't know who those consumers are. So I started thinking about, how do we integrate the technology into natural flow? If you chip a shoe and put it on chain, not only can we know all the things I talked about, but at the very start, at the factory, you know what artisan stitched that swoosh onto the shoe. You know what factory it came from, what truck and what boat and what truck it went on, and that fell off the truck and showed up in somebody's trunk in an alley. You can actually trace the provenance of that product. You can then validate who the first owner was, the second owner was. Did you guys know in Hollywood there's this market for wearing or buying tuxes that previous celebrities wore to awards shows? So you can have a tux that George Clooney wore or whatever. What if it was sneakers and handbags, right? There's a whole secondary market for it. And the ability to not only then understand the full supply chain, but Nike can look in a wallet and see there's 20 pairs of rare Jordans. You don't even know who this consumer is. None of them were bought directly through Nike, but you can airdrop something as Nike and say, thanks for being such a good Jordan fan. If you'd like to redeem a full price pair of custom Jordans, please come KYC, let us know who you are so we can reward you. And so those shoes to the consumer are worth $300. To Nike, it costs them $30. And that value exchange is directly between those companies. So now we're changing the world where retailers and social media companies don't arbitrage on this information. Brands can truly be D2C. So Christina's world's awesome. I know very little about it, but what I encourage people to do is, that was weirdly my world, is trying to understand who the Nike fans were. Because if you buy a lot, that's one type of fan, but you're waiting in line overnight in the rain, you're equally as important to me. How do I find those people? So I think that, your background, I think, is what tied to how you decided to go in this field. Mine was in the brand world, and we're equally working on the same types of problems.
For sure. Growing up as an immigrant, we immigrated to New York with my single mom. I went to Yale, and then after graduation, I said, I'm going to go cook. That made my mother cry, of course. I was mostly washing dishes, but that really made me see truly this problem and understand it so deeply, right? And solve for it, just like how you did. And very similarly, having credentials and knowing that they are authentic and being able to hire confidently based on them is equally as important. So really it translates to so many different uses. It's just incredible, the democratization that it can give to people.
You told your parents you wanted to wash dishes. I came to the U.S. when I was 6, and my parents didn't even finish middle school, so we didn't have access to a lot. I remember the first time, because you were 10 when you came to this country, right?
I was.
Similar ages. So I walk into a grocery store, and I'd never seen a barcode scanner before, because everything in Hong Kong's markets, you're buying fresh from the people who truck it in from the countryside. So this barcode scanner, they beeped, and the information and the price showed. I'm like, that's the coolest thing ever. So my parents are Asian tiger parents. An A- is an Asian F, right? I was in school 12 months out of the year. So I told my tiger parents that I wanted to be a supermarket checkout girl when I grew up. I was kind of grounded for a few weeks. And you told them you wanted to wash dishes. But isn't it funny, though, because you're now back in this industry. I'm in retail, brand, and tech. So maybe when we ask kids what do they want to be when they grow up, actually manifests.
Absolutely. You just find your way back, I think, to what it is that your calling truly is. And for me, that's really helping now other people with my same background through this landscape and finding opportunities for them to become the next leaders, right? There's so much power there, really, and so little access. Yeah. So opening that up is so important.
So I went with my work in a pretty long journey example about Nike supply chain and CRM and understanding the customer. like most women, you're like, I do something cool, but I'm not going to dig into it. I'm not going to let you get away with that. Give these guys an example of like how what you do comes to life. Let's give an example, right? And so I was picking my brain. I'm like, ooh, do you like simulate training when there's a really bad customer, but you don't want people to learn on the job with a rude real customer? Is that one of the ways to do it? Or is it the complexity of being in a new country and not understanding how kitchens or customs work? Like, give me something tangible that it's just going to click for us.
I'll do you one better. I'll go backwards too. So we start our training, let's say in the Philippines, where our company started, right? And we bring our training to a school, let's say, where someone has to fly, take a boat, and take a tricycle to get to someone's school. Can you imagine how little access that person has, right? So we bring VR training there, international style training, so that now they're ready for their career as they move forward. Then we open up pathways for them to find international internships, whether that be in the US or Europe or Asia. Help them through that process of finding them a host. Bring them here, let's say, to the US, continue that training for them, and then support them throughout that career. Now, we've had people been able to build homes for their families back home. It's really life-changing when you just give someone a key to help them open a door and, push them a little bit to step through it, right? And show them, hey, these are some of the things you can have, having a wallet that has your skills that are tokenized, your credentials. No one can ever take them away from you, but also coming from a country like the Philippines, it could take a couple of weeks, sometimes months to get all of your records, right? Just because it's so centralized. Wow. And so now you have agency constantly to just use that to move on from your career and build on that and work with, let's say, your managers and such to say, hey, this is my goal. And what we've done is put in technology to allow you also to see, let's say, these are some of the trainings that I could be taking in order to reach that goal. We do things all the way down to having an earthquake drill. Oh, wow. How do you do an earthquake drill in real life, really? What do? We stand up in line. We're all on our phones.
Under the door jam, yes. But nothing's happening, so we're all standing under the door jam.
And we're talking, watching our phones or whatever it is, right? So now we can really simulate it. Oh, wow. And work with someone on what's expected, how to take care of yourselves, of the guests, of the asset, right? And kitchen fires. You can't set your kitchen on fire, but you can certainly do that in virtual reality and see what people's reactions would be and then coach them through that. So many different ways to do it. Not to even mention like soft skills, right? Which are the most portable skills, really. From one industry to the next. So really allowing people to develop that as well.
How do you think we can be better about making this less scary for people in terms of technology? Because people always worry about, am I going to get hacked? And I always remind people, you probably didn't get hacked. You just probably clicked on a bad link, right? That's just, we say hacked a lot. Absolutely. It's rarely. But, how do we hide the tech and get people to be more excited about the value versus getting intimidated by the tech up front?
I mean, for us, it's a lot of times not even talking about how we built it, right? And it's all about the value that we're bringing. So we can give you training that will get you opportunities, that will then enable you to collect these skills, and you'll always have access to them and use that to further your career. When you're talking about it in terms that people are constantly using and are used to, then it's not quite as scary, right? And meeting them where they're at, right? Are you now comfortable with, we use headsets, right, for our VR. So a lot of times, actually, it's the teachers that have a harder time with that first step, because once you put on a headset on a university student, they're off to the races. They know exactly what they're doing. They're so used to being represented by an avatar now, right? And being rewarded by whatever it is that they're doing. So that idea, I think, is easier for that part of the population, but it's the managers and the teachers really who we've been helping as well in adopting the technology.
Right. It's in the path of like the daily life for it,
Correct.
right? Yeah, I do a lot of talks and I get a lot of resistance. So I just like to remind people like, okay, you're scared of blockchain, et cetera. We were all scared of e-commerce once, right? I remember when people said they would never buy anything online because their credit card's not safe. And I'm like, well, if you took an Uber, you not only bought it online, you got in a complete stranger's car or you're sleeping in a stranger's bed, right? So how quickly the norms change. Or I remember this because I just saw the BlackBerry movie, right? And it's like, how many of us were like, I cannot live without a BlackBerry's buttons? And now what's iPhone's percentage of share of market, right? So things change over time. And I think you have to find a value or a solution, something that solves a problem or hits a hope or a dream or a fear for people to actually be willing to take that jump into technology. And I think when you were saying before, credentials is really big, right? It's funny, she mentioned she went to Yale, I went to Harvard, so we're nerds, and we're still friends even though our schools hate each other. But do you know that 40% of people on LinkedIn who have Harvard listed in their profile did not actually go to Harvard? Now, I don't care. The more the merrier, right? It's one experience in a whole lifetime. But imagine if it is more important, like Series 7 and licensing for ability to trade stocks or doctors. And I think in a world where we're getting, and in some ways more interesting, like a fractionalized, distributed, remote workforce, it's more important than ever for people to be able to validate their experience. Or even our parents. Imagine if, my parents were, very working class, but imagine, we always hear stories about doctors in other countries coming to the States and washing dishes or driving Ubers. They can save lives, but because they can't learn the English language fast enough to test at a college or grad school level, we don't let them use their skills where we would benefit. So imagine if we did have credentials that were on chain that we could validate worldwide and we have somebody immigrate, great doctor, they might not be able to be patient facing, but could they read radiology scans? Could they be part of the workforce there? Absolutely. So I think there's so many applications. It's like kind of saying the blockchain is like the internet. Well, the internet was the internet for maybe 2 short years when no one knew what it was. The blockchain is, I think, just the new internet.
Absolutely. And once we start sort of peeling the layers and people start to actually realize how much we're living in it already, right? And really normalizing it, then that's when we start to see that adoption really come into focus and the comfort with it. And, dropping our guard a little bit and allowing ourselves to wonder, how can this be of use to me? Because like you said, you found really awesome uses for it in your work, right? Did you ever find a time where there was a use that you thought, oh, wow, that went even better than I thought?
Yeah, this one's kind of funny. So I've been lucky to work with some brands in this space. I worked with Adidas when they did their Bored Ape Yacht Club collab with Punk's Comic and G Money. Worked with a bunch of NFT projects that are all still around, which I'm very happy to. I was interim CMO of Art Blocks for a little while, so helping them think about how to go from generative art into brands. But the one that went better than I thought, and it was super simple, is there's a nightclub in Miami that is super hard to get into. People wait for hours. If you just want to go in, it's $300. The average table is $8,000. And if you went during Bitcoin, it's $50,000 for a table at this place. So it is hard to get in even if you have the money. They wanted to launch an NFT project and they had all these perks, right? We'll have dinners, we'll have hats and all the stuff. And by the way, they sell hats with their logo. They're $50 each and they sell $2 million worth of hats a year. That is how big this nightclub is. So we laid out all these perks because this was 2 years ago when it was the NFT boom and every project had to have perks, which was basically I got to go to a party and buy a hoodie. So we were going through this list of stuff and I was like, well, what's great about it is there's real life utility. And granted, it's regionalized to just Miami, but lots of people come and everyone wants to go to this nightclub. But as I thought about it, I was like, what do people really want? Is they want to get in and they don't want to look stupid waiting at the door. So we stripped away all of those extra perks. And the one perk for this 3 ETH mint was the ability to skip the line and walk right in. So when you think about hundreds of people, guys, there's literally hundreds of people like, Travis Scott and everyone play there. You walk right up with your date or the deal you're trying to close, and they roll out the red carpet, they lift the rope, and you walk in. And that was worth 3 ETH to 1,000 people. So all this comes back to humans. right? When people ask me about NFTs, I'm like, why do you care about an NFT? It's a format of a file. When I ask you your favorite music, you don't say MP3s or CDs. You say rock or hip hop or jazz. The same thing about an NFT. What was true about that project is it was a membership to the inner circle. It just happened to be on an NFT that could be traded on a secondary, which is great when people are coming for a bachelor party and you can move it around. But that one went wildly successfully because we just tapped into human nature and they wanted belonging, they wanted access. And, it was great because that got to then fund a lot of the projects that this company is continuing to build, which is a lot in metaverse space, building communities, having more people get access. It was weird and wild, but really fun. And all we had to do was let people into the front.
That's amazing. Well, I definitely remember having to stand in New York City nightclubs, so
Right.
that's awesome.
Okay, we have to wrap soon, but your company is so mission-based. I would ask you, what is the last thought you either want to leave people with, or what is the ask that we can do for people here, people online watching, that we can do to support you?
Well, really just spreading the mission, right, of giving access to as many people as possible as we can for those who are traditionally just don't have that type of reach or access and capability to get things. So opening our minds to being able to use this type of technology to do that.
Amazing. And are your socials, your website? Where can people learn?
You can find me at LinkedIn and Cristina Imperial Carl, and we are at goedify.com as well.
Cool. I am Swan, SWANSIT, on all the platforms. Give Cristina an incredible round of applause for the great work she's doing. Thank you to Grit Daily and South by for hosting us.
Thank you so much.